Efforts are made to flesh out Spartan at this point. Huxley is thrilled with the excitement of what she'd just witnessed, going on about it until Spartan barks at her that hurting people is not a good thing. It's sometimes a necessary thing, but it's not a good thing. And on the way back, he laments the situation with his daughter, that she's out there somewhere and lived most of her life without him, and much of it through this stuffed animal version of life. He doesn't know yet if he even wants to find her now. Oh, and speaking of finding someone, seems Phoenix has found Cocteau's place and decided to let himself in.
I got passcodes, routes to secret underground kingdoms, complete access to the industrial data grid interface. I don't even know what that shit means.
One problem very intelligent people suffer from is they can severely overestimate the intelligence of others or severely underestimate it. Think for a moment about Spock and Kirk playing three-dimensional chess, and Spock lamenting Kirk beating him by not making the logical move. As I previously joked, if a move gives you victory rather than defeat, how can it not be logical? The lamentation wasn't about the winning move, though, but rather Kirk's approach. If you're leaving a second-story apartment, you can take the stairs, or you can head out the window, dangle from the ledge, and drop to the alley. The stairs are the logical move. It's easier to do and avoids potential injuries. Imagine if every decision you had to make was that obvious to you, stairs or window. You assume that other people are going to operate the same. What Kirk did was begin to pick between the window and the stairs without regard for logic. While Spock played a perfectly predictable game, Kirk became unpredictable. What makes Simon Phoenix such a dangerous person to conscript as a pawn is that he's not only willing to take the window, he often prefers the window. While Dr. Cocteau thinks he can outthink the savage, he's allowing Phoenix to play his own game to ends that he thinks he understands, but he doesn't. The same way the computer presumed the first thing that Phoenix would do would be to set up a drug lab and criminal syndicate, Cocteau profoundly misunderstands what he's dealing with. So when Phoenix explains that to do this job and kill Edgar Friendly, he needs a crew, but makes clear these are just crooks, not mad dog killers like himself, Cocteau goes along with it. He wants to see the job done and knows he's got Phoenix on some kind of subliminal leash to not turn against him, so why not? Plus, don't underestimate the effect of good fashion on Cocteau. Phoenix has found a way to put cobbled-together armor over his t-shirt and Oshkosh bagoshes and make it look good. Well, Huxley has brought Spartan to her building. There's a room for him there, but they stop by her place first. She suggests having sex, after a bit of a build-up of how seeing the kicking of ass has convinced her it's time to bone. So she gets ready. It's the return of Kayla's fucking helmet. Nice. So they settle in while the Love Boat theme plays, and soon there are all these weird things going into his brain involving Huxley, until finally he yanks the thing from his head, which is a surprising moment to pull out. When he suggests doing it the old-fashioned way, she's outraged at the idea of exchanging fluids.
And one of the first things that Dr. Cocteau was able to do was to outlaw and behaviorally engineer all fluid transfer out of societally acceptable behavior.
St. Angeles is a perfect example of a dystopia built upon the position of tidiness, and a show where it leads. Because ask yourself, what it is you haven't come across so far the thriving society should have. New art. Everything creatively expressive comes from the past. Sanitized, perhaps, but the point is that however great this society might seem, there's nothing in it that is worth singing about. Huxley herself, looking at the quote-unquote barbaric past and desiring some action, shows an absence that she is filling from history because the present cannot permit it. This is not utopia. This is the first stage of a universal ennui, carrying the hint of lavender and vanilla wafers. So Spartan heads to his new place to look around a bit, then takes out what Huxley had gotten for him, a recording of the interaction between Phoenix and Cocteau outside the museum, which he watches while knitting. Seems while he was sleeping, he was implanted with a skill that suited his genetic predisposition, and considering the sweater he makes, seems like a good match. So, having discussed the techniques in sword forging with Highlander and the science and making of chocolate with Willy Wonka movies, I thought perhaps we'd discuss how knitting is both a therapeutic and... Nah, just fucking with you. Let's move on to the mayhem.
I'm a seamstress? Oh, that's just great. I come out of cryo prison and I'm Betsy fucking Ross. If Phoenix comes out and he can access computers, operate all vehicles, knows the location of every damn thing in town, and is 3 times stronger than when he went in?
Ah, a clue. Sure enough, they spot that Phoenix' rehabilitation program was how to become Cobra Commander if he were also a Terminator. They show up to confront Cocteau, who isn't there, though. He's speaking via a bunch of tiny swiveling monoliths. You know, like we all do in the 21st century.
Even now, I'm beginning to wonder if the chaos in the museum was the result of Mr. Phoenix's presence or your own.
Oh, looks like he's in after all. What a wonderful development. Well, Cocteau calls his bluff. Spartan isn't going to simply gun him down. And without that, threats mean nothing. So he instead tells Huxley to put Spartan back in the freezer. But Spartan has a foolproof way of avoiding Huxley doing that by telling her he won't go. Her options are fairly limited. It's just a cry of, "Stop, or I'll repeat myself." Spartan says the reason the cops haven't found Phoenix, despite a citywide manhunt, is that he's gone underground, literally. So they bring Garcia to go check it out. He's got the size scan after all. And they find hordes of people living below, the scraps. When Cocteau calls them the outcasts and deserters, he's likely talking more of the former than the latter. I find it more likely that these people are not here because they've chosen this over the surface, but rather because they've no other choice. Now, I could be wrong about this, but if, as I suspect, Cocteau's system allows so many to fall through the cracks, then what it's doing is it's channeling the outcasts to Edgar Friendly and those like him, handing those with a cause to fight for a mob who have an axe to grind, and suddenly plenty of free time on their hands. The more Cocteau tries to purify his society, the greater the army he builds to oppose it. He obviously realizes this, but he's unwilling to compromise on his vision. Instead, rather than trying to find a way to make sure that everybody can fit into this society, he's just going to eliminate Edgar Friendly, the seed crystal around which he believes all of this is forming, and the scraps will stop being such a nuisance. Spartan finds one advantage of an outlaw society, though. The stupid laws from up top don't apply. Hence, he can go and get an actual burger and a beer from a vendor.
Oh, God. This is fantastic. You guys gotta try this.
Just don't ask where the meat comes from.
Huxley, what's that supposed to mean?
Do you see any cows around here, Detective?
Oh yeah, the downside of the outlaw society is that health inspectors start and stop at, make sure you wipe that off if you drop it. It's rat meat. But even then, 4 stars in Spartan's book. 5 stars goes to the sports car that they find someone has been restoring down here. Even Huxley recognizes it. It does run on nasty old gasoline instead of hair gel, but she still likes it. But the trip down automobile lane is interrupted by Edgar Friendly and his merry men, who arrive with guns. After some initial confusion...
You tell Cocteau he can kiss my ass. Yeah, that's right. You tell Cocteau it's going to take an army of assholes to get rid of me, because I don't give a shit. I got nothing to lose.
I don't want to rain on your parade, pal.
I don't even know who you are.
I guess you weren't part of the Cocteau plan.
Greed, deception, abuse of power, that's no plan.
Yeah, that sounds less like a plan and more like the bullet points for our corporate culture.
I've seen the future. You know what it is? It's a 47-year-old virgin sitting around in his beige pajamas, drinking a banana broccoli shake, singing, "I'm an Oscar Mayer wiener."
Yeah, the striking difference between 1984 and Brave New World is just, if you haven't read both of them, you're doing yourself a disservice. Read them both. They are eye-opening. What we have here is not the case of Orwell's boots stomping on a human face forever. This is the reduction of the human race to the state of children, sanding every edge off every surface in the misguided belief that utopia can be imposed from without rather than coming from within. When you reduce people to children on a society-wide level, then you remove the capacity to cope. It's mentioned that Cocteau swooped in after a big earthquake. Except what will happen after the next disaster that the law cannot order to not happen? An earthquake, a tidal wave, or just humans that are beyond the borders deciding a place where no one is armed might be a nice place to set up shop. When you deny people the need to cope with things beyond their comfort zone, they respond like the immature children you have created, demanding the bad things go away. until you have an entire underclass of people who are suffering because in a place where every last detail is marked and cataloged and measured, human beings are treated as an asset to be rejected if found to be flawed. Well, Phoenix has assembled his little posse and goes to deal with Friendly, only to find Spartan there as well. So they fight, then they fight, then they fight, then they fight. Garcia goes to stop him. He did better than I thought. Phoenix gets separated from his peeps and escapes to the surface, while Spartan and Huxley... Ah, my Uber is here. They chase after Phoenix, who has stolen Huxley's squad car, and eventually, since car chases have their own unique logic, Spartan is grappling with Phoenix in the squad car, and Phoenix reveals that he'd already killed the bus passengers. He'd set Spartan up to take the rap for it. I'm starting to think this Simon Phoenix is a real jerk. He's tossed from the car, but that means Spartan's trying to get the busted-ass vehicle back under control. May need a second driving lesson. The captain wants to bring him in, but Spartan's not heading back because he doesn't want to, and, well, that's that. Meanwhile, Officer Friendly and friends have arrived to deal with shit once and for all. There's only 20 minutes left, of course. Cocteau is thrilled that, as a side effect of his rampage, Phoenix has so terrified the populace that he can even further impose his own view upon society.
Look, you can't take away people's right to be assholes.
You may be crazy, but he's got a point. If he did that, I'd be out of a job. Well, now's the moment when he reveals the flaw in Cocteau's thinking. He may be programmed not to kill his assholiness, but the others aren't. And just because they're not mad dog killers doesn't mean they're not willing to kill if the situation calls for it. Cocteau's toady, knowing the winds of change are blowing, offers to switch over to Phoenix's administration. But how long his new term will last is going to depend on Spartan, who along with Huxley beats up several of his minions on the way inside. Phoenix is long gone, though, heading to the cryo prison to unleash all the multi-lifers on this society. And not a one of them knows how to knit. So, time to go. To Dreamland. Time to go to Dreamland. As for the prison, mention is made by fans that one of the ones listed is a guy who was arrested after the movie was made. Fair enough. However...
Jeffrey Dahmer? I love this guy!
Dahmer died 2 years before Phoenix was frozen, so that makes the score 1-1. Spartan arrives, and the gunfight begins.
Didn't expect that one, did you?
Good luck with that. Those claw machines are rigged. They say if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. Spartan escapes by freezing the metal until it shatters, so this becomes a laser fight. Oh, make that a lightning fight. Well, Mjolnir finally runs out of juice, so this becomes a fist fight now. With his enhancement training, Phoenix has the upper hand, but Spartan resorts to whipping out one of the cylinders with his tiny blue ball inside and smashes it onto the water that's covering the floor. Oh, big time shrinkage, I'm betting. Spartan finally deals with him. Ain't that a kick in the head? Well, it turns out freezing this place is bad for it and everything explodes. Let's hope that Spartan was the only innocent person sentenced to cryo-freeze. With the threat of Phoenix eliminated and Cocteau cooked in his own fireplace, the question of what's next for San Angeles naturally comes up. As they no longer have the forces for total order and total chaos, Spartan suggests meeting in the middle between them. And he also thinks that it's high time Future Sex went old school. Stallone had very limited screen time with Rob Schneider, but the two would be reunited in his next work as law enforcement officer on the other side of the law, Judge Dredd. That film wasn't as well received as this one, and it wouldn't be until 2012 that another film adapted from that source material would come out, simply called Dredd. That's what we're going to talk about in 2 weeks, after which we'll take a look at both of these futuristic law enforcement films. Until then, be well.